Hi, Aqua Roomers. Time for chapter reading. Yesterday, we read about the wolf pack, and then the wolves came to the house that night, and they made, so interesting, an entire ring, a circle around the house. And Pa let Laura go to the window. It was just a hole, and look out and see the wolves. Very exciting. And it's the next day, and Pa has decided he's going to make a door and not have to use that quilt any longer. Well, breakfast was ready. Pa came back from the creek. They all sat by the fire and ate fried mush and prairie chicken hash. Pa said he would make a door that very day. He wanted more than a quilt between them and the wolves next time. I have no more nails, but I'll not keep on waiting till I can make a trip to Independence, he said. A man doesn't need nails to build a house or make a door. After breakfast, he hitched up Pet and Patty, and taking his axe, he went to get timber for the door. Timber is wood. Laura helped wash the dishes and make the beds, but that day, Mary minded the baby. Laura helped Pa make the door. Mary watched, but Laura handed him the tools. And of course, the timber is from trees, from the logs. He had to go down and cut those down by the creek. So with the saw, he sawed logs the right length for a door. He sawed shorter lengths for cross pieces. Then with the axe, he split the logs into slabs and smoothed them nicely. He laid the long slabs together on the ground and placed the shorter slabs across them. And then he bored holes through the cross pieces into the long slabs. Into every hole, he drove a wooden peg that fitted tightly. That made the door. It was a good oak door, solid and strong. For the hinges, he cut 3 long straps. One hinge was to be near the top of the door, one near the bottom, and one in the middle. He fastened them first to the door in this way. He laid a little piece of wood on the door and bored a hole into the door. Then he doubled one end of a strap around the little piece of wood, and with his knife, he cut round holes through the strap. He laid the little piece of wood on the door again, with the strap doubled around it, and all the holes making one hole. Then Laura gave him a peg and the hammer, and he drove the peg into the hole. The peg went through the strap and the little piece of wood, and through the strap again into the door. That held the strap so it couldn't get loose. I told you a fella doesn't need nails, Pa said. When he had fastened the 3 hinges to the door, he set the door in the doorway. It fitted. Then he pegged strips of wood to the old slabs on either side of the doorway to keep the door from swinging outward. He set the door in place again, and Laura stood against it to hold it there in place, while Pa fastened the hinges to the door frame. But before he did this, he had made the latch on the door, the handle to open and close, because, of course, there must be some way to keep the door shut. This was the way he made the latch. First, he hewed a short, thick piece of oak. From one side of this, in the middle, he cut a wide, deep notch. He pegged this stick into the inside of the door, up and down and near the edge. He put the notch side against the door, so the notch made a little slot. Then he hewed and whittled a longer, smaller stick. This stick was small enough to slip easily through the slot. He slid one end of it through the slot, and he pegged the other end to the door. But he did not peg it tightly. The peg was solid and firm in the door, but the hole in the stick was larger than the peg. The only thing that held the stick on the door was the slot. This stick was the latch. It turned easily on the peg, and its loose end moved up and down in the slot. And the loose end of it was long enough to go through the slot and across the crack between the door and the wall. When Pa and Laura had hung the door in the doorway, Pa marked the spot on the wall where the end of the latch came, and over that spot he pegged to the wall a stout piece of oak. Let me show this to you. So Pa is building the door with no nails. So, do you see those little circles? Those are the pegs that he pounded into the wood, and that will hold the cross piece against the up and down piece, and that will make the door. And there's the latch, goes up and down and up and down. I think Laura's having fun helping. Do you think you could make a door? Whew. That is hard work. Over the spot, he pegged to the wall a stout piece of oak. And this piece, I'm so sorry, and this piece of oak was cut out at the top so the latch could drop between it and the wall. I have that kind of a latch on my door. So I hold my thumb down and it goes up and down and up and down. And if it's down, the door's closed and it can't open. And if it's open, the door can open and close. So Laura pushed the door shut, and while she lifted the other end of the latch, as she pushed, it went as high as it would go in the wall. Then she let it fall into its place behind the oak, and that held the latch, and the up and down strip held everything in the slot against the door. Whew! Nobody could break in without breaking that strong latch in two. But there must be a way to lift the latch from the outside. So Pa made a latch string. He cut it from a long strip of good leather. He tied one end of the latch between the peg and the slot, and above it he bored a small hole through the door, and he pushed the end of the latch string through the hole. Laura stood outside, and when the end of the latch string came through the hole, she took hold of it and pulled. She could pull it hard enough to lift it and let herself in. The door was finished. It was strong and solid, made of thick oak with oak slabs across it, all pegged together with good stout pegs. The latch string was out, and if you wanted to come in, you pulled the string. But if you were inside and wanted to keep anyone out, then you pulled it back through the hole and nobody could get in. There was no doorknob, not on that door, and there was no keyhole and no key. But it was a good door. I call that a good day's work, said Pa, and I had a fine little helper. He hugged the top of Laura's head with his hand. Then he gathered up his tools, put them away, whistling, and he went to take Pet and Patty from their picket lines to water. The sun was setting, the breeze was cooler, supper was cooking on the fire, and the best supper smells came that Laura had ever smelled. There was salt pork for supper. It was the last of the salt pork. So next day, Pa went hunting. But the day after that, he and Laura made the barn door. It was exactly like the house door, except it had no latch. Pet and Patty did not understand door latches, and they would not pull a latch string at night. So instead of a latch, Pa made a hole through the door, and he put a chain through the hole. At night, he would pull an end of the chain through a crack between the logs in the stable, and he would padlock the two ends of the chain together. Nobody could get into that stable. Now we're all snug, Pa said. When neighbors began to come into a country, it's best to lock up your house at night, because where there are deer, there will be wolves, and when there are horses, there could be horse thieves. That night at supper, Pa said to Ma, "Now, Caroline, as soon as we get Edward's house up, I'm going to build you a fireplace, so you don't have to do your cooking outside of the house, out in the wind and the storms. It seems like I never did see a place with so much sunshine, but I suppose it's bound to rain sometime." "Yes, Charles," Ma said, "good weather never lasts forever on this earth." Ooh, this will be an exciting chapter. A fire on the hearth. So the hearth is the part of the fireplace that's right in the front. Ooh. Outside the house, close to the log wall, opposite the door, Pa cut away the grass and scraped the ground smooth. He was getting ready to build the fireplace. Then he and Ma put the wagon box back on the wheels again, and Pa hitched up Pet and Patty. The rising sun was shortening all the shadows. Hundreds of meadowlarks were rising from the prairie, singing higher and higher in the air. Their songs came down from the great clear sky like a rain of music. And all over the land, where the grasses waved and murmured under the wind, thousands of little dicky birds clung with their tiny claws on the blossoming weeds and sang their thousands of little songs. Pet and Patty sniffed the wind and whinnied with joy. They arched their necks and pawed at the ground. They were eager to go. Pa was whistling while he climbed to the wagon seat and took the reins. Then he looked down at Laura, who was looking up at him, and he stopped whistling and said, "Want to go along, Laura? You and Mary?" Ma said they could. They climbed up the wheels, clinging to the spokes with their bare toes, and they sat on the high wagon seat beside Pa. Pet and Patty started with a little jump, and the wagon went jolting down the road that Pa's wagon wheels had made. They went down between bare, reddish walls of earth, all ridged and wrinkled by forgotten rains, and then they went on across rolling lands of the creek bottoms. Oh, I can't wait to see what they're going to find when they get down there. And it is a big adventure. So, Aqua Roomers, stay tuned tomorrow. Lots of good things happening. All right? Until then, bye.